In this easy art journaling tutorial, we're going to dive into how to draw with only one pen to start so you can create simple, abstract art journaling pages that may feel therapeutic. It might feel like wonderful journaling for self-care. It could simply be your way to move through creative blocks, or even to integrate mindfulness and art together as a way to slow down in your drawing. So everything that we're going to be exploring today is starting with one pen and one mark on the page. And you're going to see how this can really start to develop into something even at times more complex and interesting, varied, and how starting with one line on the page in this one-line art tutorial can also then lead to other interesting ideas to tap into your creative muse and your inspiration, where you might even be surprised with what you create. So what I'm doing right now on the page, these are calligraphy pens. I will have descriptions and everything linked below if you're curious about the art supplies I'm using. But what I love about these calligraphy pens, the one I'm playing with right now has a chiseled tip. So depending on how I'm rotating the pen, I might have a thicker or thinner line. And when I first started, I really was rotating and swirling the pen in my hands, so I actually had less control. And years ago, when I was exploring my art degree, I remember a teacher told me to collaborate with chance. And what is it like to create from a place of not knowing? You might have an idea of what you want to create in your abstract painting or abstract drawing, but there's also this element of being open to curiosity, to seeing what might unfold. And part of that can come through depending on the art materials that you're using. So in this case, I'm using that chiseled marker, calligraphy marker tip. I also play a lot with watercolors. So you're going to see some watercolor painting later in the video as we start layering and adding more color. And watercolors also can be sometimes out of our control. There is that deep sense of collaborating with chance. And that's, again, because of the limitation of the material. And so I also often recommend, and I practice this, I share this in my classes and in my teacher trainings, I talk about choosing a creative limitation. And this was also something I learned in my master's program years ago from a professor, that we can choose one material, one intention, one way of working, or maybe 1 to 3 creative limitations that can help to quiet down the plethora of choices that we have when we're creating in our art journal. And that by having more of a limitation, we're actually freed up. It actually sparks more of our creativity. So with this one, I began with asemic writing, or asemic writing, which is that squiggled writing that you see at the top in that thinner brush stroke. And so the intention was to start with just that one line, using my one calligraphy pen and seeing, like following the breadcrumbs along a beautiful trail, seeing where that trail takes me. And part of this creative limitation and working with just one line and how to draw with only one pen to begin, all of these I feel are really rooted in this beautiful foundation of combining mindfulness and art, or art as meditation. And so this mindfulness practice of coming back to the present moment, noticing what we're creating right now, noticing that with as much non-judgmental awareness as possible, and then choosing the next step and the next step. And this way of being as we're creating can be a really lovely way to free us up to, Rick Rubin talks about this in his book, The Creative Way, that we can not know and we can be in the unknowing and be in the question of what if. And I like this idea of what if and also what next. What is that next step that I want to make in my art journal And also this works for life. So outside of the art journal, just in your life, what if and what next? And so by beginning with that initial asemic writing and squiggle on the page, I felt inspired to have deeper, richer lines that you see beneath that horizontally, which led to choosing the dot shapes, which also then inspired me to go back and have bolder, more contrasted lines, which I'm doing here at the top. So everything I find in mindfulness and art practice combined can embrace this element of surprise and collaboration. So what I'm doing here is I am going to randomly choose a watercolor paint out of my lovely bag. These are with 31 purple watercolors. I will share a link if anyone is curious, and I will be doing a fun collaboration soon. But it looks like the color I chose is called Moonstar. I love this color. It's almost like a Payne's gray, and I love that it can be a monotone, really rich color all on itself. You can have an entire art journaling page or painting with this color, and as you build up layers, it has a lot of different richness. So you'll see that because I am feeling inspired to add a lot of different layers using this Moonstar color. And so had I started from the very beginning with an entire full palette of colors and all of my endless brushes and pens and pencils, I can tell you that I likely would have felt overwhelmed, because I have felt that before. And perhaps you have accumulated a lot of art supplies and also can relate to this feeling of overwhelm. And I love that having a creative limitation combined with this foundation of mindfulness when we approach our art journal, whether that's abstract art making or mixed media art or slow drawing or therapeutic art journaling, any of these approaches, when we come to it with that foundation, we can have a sense of curiosity and compassion for ourselves and for what's happening on the page. So what I'm doing now is I'm starting to build up layers with the paint. I really am doing a lot of wet and wet with the watercolors, so the color moves around pretty seamlessly on the page. And then I'm going back in and I'm building up some of the color. I'm adding different variations of the marks. And this is something that I love to do for visual interest, but also because it can feel really good as I'm making it, to have broader, watered down, sweeping, large areas compared to more condensed pops of color that you'll see in some of my other videos. I'll use gold as an accent. And I also will sometimes do this as a wet on dry. So it can be fun to allow the paint to completely dry. And with watercolors, it's great because it won't take long. And then you can go in and add another layer, perhaps glazing or these pops of color over top. And it does look different visually. So that can be something that can be fun to play with as well. So something else about mixed media art is you see I have ink here with the calligraphy pen, that golden pen. I have the watercolors. I'm varying all of these things. So even though I started with one line and intention, I'm building on that. And I would love to hear in the comment box below, if you choose a creative limitation for yourself, I'd love to hear what that is, because the beautiful part is we can all choose different creative limitations. And if we use the same creative limitation again and again, we're going to end up making different work. So you can see here, this was my limitation of starting with one pen. You can see a lot of different variations that ultimately led to this last one with lots of richness and color. If you're curious to dive in more, you can check out some of these next videos. And I also have in the description box workbook you can download with lots of mindful art prompts